So my concern, now that I've been in-house for 2 cannabis companies and practiced in private practice and seen what the alcohol laws look like, is that we won't catch up soon enough. And we are writing these laws that exclude people. And if they do include people, they don't include them soon enough.
Follow them for the rest of their lives.
People are outside
and
of
prevent them
compliance.
from getting all sorts of employment. We're basically called collateral consequences. And there are about 45,000 of these collateral consequences on the state, local, and federal level for arrests and convictions. It's not just for drug arrests, but because drug arrests are the #1 reason that anyone is arrested in the country, this is who are going to be punished. And when we also think about drug arrests, as the last panel was talking about, we're all talking disproportionately about black and brown young men. And so what you have is we are still continuing to create victims of the drug war that cannot integrate well into the economy, whether it's the legal weed industry or if it is other parts of the economy.
You know, marijuana is getting legalized all over the place, but meanwhile, marijuana arrests have barely come down from 700,000 to 600,000. You got a state like New Jersey, which is on the verge of legalizing, but marijuana arrests have gone up in the last few years. There's still 600,000 people, still disproportionately young men of color, getting busted for weed. There are still people losing their jobs for testing positive for weed when they're doing perfectly well on the job. There's still people, there's horrible things going on. The war on marijuana is going on and on and on and on and on, and I want to see media covering that story.
Offering a counter narrative and offering context, I feel like, is something that we can do as journalists, and have just laying that out maybe will make a little bit of a difference.
It requires intentionality on our part. We've, for example, have covered equity a lot in Massachusetts, and we've done that by trying to share the microphone with a really broad diversity of people, getting out into those community spaces, like accessing those sources that are not going to send you a press release.
A number of these things are civil asset forfeiture. When they stop people's cars and don't even arrest them and don't even charge them with anything, but take the cash that they've got on, they take the cash with their ATM machines, and they take the car because they think it was maybe bought with illicit drug money. And then, of course, you can sue if you want, but the lawyer might cost more than your car or than the money you had on you, or you may have other things to do in your life than to go back to Oklahoma that you were driving through and handle this. You've seen the numbers that more money is taken by police in civil asset forfeiture than in burglaries last year.
And there's a robust, thriving illicit market in California. That has not changed. It is hard to encourage people to participate in a robust market, in a legal marketplace, when the cost is so high.
Activists can be really responsive to news. They can add context, analysis, and they can use these giant coalitions that we've built.
If it was not for them, then a lot of stories would have been told inaccurately, right? And so there's a way that journalists feel that we are the only people who are supposed to tell stories, and that's 24-karat BS, right? And so you all have the ability to tell stories. You may not necessarily be a journalist, but you can tell your story.
There are some narratives that have so much play from such powerful parts of society that I have, in the past couple of years, been frustrated with our own abilities to keep trying to correct those narratives, at least in terms of facts, right?
It's so important to get real, authentic voices in our paper. And so, for example, when you're talking about a community like immigrants, those can be people who may be afraid to speak up, to have their name in the paper. And an advocacy group is a great portal into a larger community that you may not have access to personally as a reporter.
Even if you don't have a conviction, just admitting that you have or deal with marijuana or have in any way related to it can create a problem for you in the immigration process. So there's that. That's the reality today, and I think that a lot of the what we've heard about the war on drugs really dovetails with what we're hearing about immigrants.
But when we're talking about the devil is in the details and our laws are supposed to be colorblind, when you are writing a local ordinance that explicitly excludes people from participating who have prior convictions, as we see in other parts of California, you are creating a system that locks out the people who fueled the market in the first place. And then when you have a dual licensing system like we have in California, there's still the chance that you might be disqualified.
If we're talking specifically about cannabis, if cannabis is legalized, for employers specifically, I think that should be taken off as a screener. Like alcohol, you don't get disqualified for alcohol when you're applying for a job. I think I would like to see immediate expungement for all marijuana-related offenses as well. Those are the kind of things that we need, and then moving forward past that, obviously, racial equity.
The conversation has moved way past whether to legalize. Now we're talking about how to legalize, who profits from this newly legal industry.
When we talk about who's going to be the growers, the owners, it should be a mirror image of those that have been to prison for it.
There are a lot of factions within pro-pot, sure. As you rightfully said, that's way too simple a moniker. And so something that we've tried to do is write about the different advocacy groups, which have actually competing policy priorities in many cases, and actually illuminate the differences between them and show the full diversity of thought within those communities.
Each state has different advertising policies, and each state has different legal standards for cannabis right now. And essentially, Facebook and Google and the rest of them are sort of erring on the side of banning more stuff. And so they're basically like, well, let's just ban it just in case. We don't really want somebody to say we're facilitating legal activity. That's something that they're I'd say terrified of. And so that's why they're sort of leaning towards banning more advertisements or blocking more people from purchasing advertisements. And that kind of informs the rule book and everything that they do there.
We really have an opportunity to kind of set the narrative, frankly. Other outlets look to us to sort of tell everybody what are we talking about? What's the conversation? Like, where's the focus going?
It's about educating journalists, taking the time, pushing them to do the right story. When they write a story and they get the facts wrong, perspective wrong, it's getting right in their face politely and sometimes not politely to say, fix it up.
Yeah. In cannabis, you can become a subject matter expert actually fairly easily if you just sit down and read the regulations or you're paying attention to what's going on in your state. It's not as establishment driven as in other areas.
All of the work that we try to do to expand legal access, safe and legal access to patients is compromised. And it's not just our work. It's the work of cultivators, it's the work of manufacturers, it's the work of distributors, it's the work of testing labs, it's the work of retailers, it's the work of everybody across this industry that we're all trying to do together to build a functioning regulated marketplace. All of that is compromised by these technology platforms that seemingly are beyond government regulation at this point.
To my knowledge, we haven't had any issues being pulled from Facebook or anything like that. Our only real issue is, obviously, the issue everybody else here has is placing ads and targeting on social media.
Sponsoring posts.
Correct, right.
And so you guys have not been able to do that?
It's hit and miss.
What I've asked is, can you give me the specifics of what I can and cannot do? And it's still vague, to speak to your point. So that's where I get frustrated.
There are some cannabis posts that'll have ads on them. No idea why. No idea why they say yes to one and no to another.
What is it specifically about this post that violated your terms, your community terms? I need to know.
No guidance.
No guidance whatsoever.
If we're putting ads on alcohol, we're putting ads on all this other stuff. Why not cannabis too?
We believe that the farmers are like any other agricultural farmer in America. They grew up, some of them, multi-generational farming in the Emerald Triangle. And the only difference is that while their neighbors were growing wine grapes, their parents also might have been growing cannabis plants. And their experience growing up was of helicopters, raids, seeing their parents arrested. And now they are putting the faith in our company to try to bring them into the regulated market to provide the support so that they can be treated like any other business. And there's a lot of distrust in that for some people because you're identifying yourself as someone who's cultivating this plant. And there's a lot of fear that they will somehow lose to larger corporate interests because we have made it so burdensome to participate.
As this gets stopped, and it's getting stopped by state, that I think also makes the cannabis industry and drug industry in general less of a target, because that's the one you can always imagine. We think that cash came from, they don't say from bank robbery, because then you might say, what bank?
I think news outlets like the Globe and others are responsible for the narratives that they create, and they have a responsibility to step back and ask, add it all together, what is our coverage telling people about this subject? And I think that was something that didn't happen for far too long, and it's something that we're trying to change now.